And we're back with another episode of the Hole in the Soul podcast. Kevin Oldham and Jose Bolaños here. And before we dive into today's episode, if I don't mind taking 30 seconds to let you guys know about a project that we're basically bringing to life. It's called VUCA Fit. You can go check it out at VUCAFit.com, VUCAFit.com, where you're going to find a bunch of resources. Most importantly, you're going to find two things that Jose has created. Number one, his breathing cheat sheet. It's something that when I was his student, I used to carry around. I would take with me to my martial arts tournaments. So I would remember to breathe and calm my mind. And the second thing we want to share with you is there is a guide, 5 steps that you can take today to start becoming unbreakable. Jose, welcome, my friend.
What up? Thank you.
What up?
Happy to be here. Happy to be here.
I'm glad you're here.
Happy to be a guest on this talk.
You're not a guest. You're a co-host.
I'm not a guest. We're good. I'm happy to be here with you once again.
Once again. You know what? Let's talk about something that's big. Huge. The S word. We're going to talk about the S word. Spirituality.
The S word or spirituality. I thought it was going to be the F word.
No.
Which faith?
No, I'm not faith, spirituality. Because here's the thing. Well, I guess we could talk about the difference between faith and spirituality. I throw them in the same bucket. When I think of spirituality, I think that in order to be spiritual, I have to have faith in stuff that I can't see.
Yeah. I think so too.
Yeah.
But
let's talk.
How do you want to approach this?
I'm going to talk. I want to first and foremost contrast our journeys with faith in our higher power. And I'm going to go first because I'm talking.
Go ahead.
So there you go. So I did not grow up with religion or faith or spirituality as part of my childhood. It was, I don't even know if it was ever mentioned. And it's not because my parents weren't, my mother's deceased, but spiritual people, right? I know they used to go to church. They stopped when I was born. And so therefore, my entire time living with my parents, spirituality was not, and faith and religion were not part of my upbringing. They weren't part of my 20s. Definitely not part of my 20s. You can listen to other episodes. You will see that I was doing other things in my 20s that would prohibit me from ever showing up in a context associated with a Sunday morning service or anything. And so really what happened with me was I met a girl. The girl had a twin sister who lived in community I live in now, Lee Summit, Missouri. And I used to, the girl I met, my wife now, she was a traveling consultant. And long story short, she was just home on weekends. If I wanted to see her, I needed to come to Lee Summit and spend time with her because she was living with her sister. And one of the ways I could spend time with her was going to church on Sunday mornings with her sister and her family and my girlfriend at that point in time. And so I started going to church, which we still belong to today, and read the Bible. I read the Bible one year. So that's really what did it.
You started going to church to spend time with your current wife.
Absolutely.
When you met her. That's why you started going to church. That's like Kevin Oldham's intro to the religion church world, from what I'm getting here.
Yeah. The first time I sat in church pew because I wanted to was because I liked a girl and she was there. Yeah.
How old were you?
31, 32.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I was probably 32. I think.
And then you say,
let's see. I was either 32 or 33 when we met. So, early 30s. Yeah.
And then you said you started reading the Bible.
Yeah. So that's what did it for me, man. I found this Bible the other day. I actually still have it, which is really cool. It was basically one of those, these are everywhere, but read the Bible in a year type of thing. And as I was reading it, well, first of all, a lot of stuff in the Old Testament did not make sense to me and still don't make sense to me. I would go back and I read it. Like, I much prefer the New Testament. I can relate to that. That happened a couple thousand years ago. When you start talking about people living all these years and all these things, like, it's a little bit hard to get my head around. But I still read it. I read it and I said, you know what? This stuff is not made up. Like, these, this is an important historical text. And from a person who's always kind of operated from logic and reasoning and things like that, it was a little bit of a hard jump for me to understand a lot of the things in the Bible the first time I read it. But I became a dad, and that's really where the turning point was, and decided to dedicate my life and give my life to Christ. I did so on a day that was typically a bad day for me historically. So March 11th. March 11th is a day that one of my good friends, Arturo Esparza, took his own life when we were in the early 2000s. It was also a day that I had to put my very first dog down, Jackson, my beagle. And it was just one of these days that my girlfriend / wife, now, Andrea, when I was looking at getting baptized, that the 11th, March 11th, showed up on a Sunday, and it was soon. And we both decided to make it a day of celebration versus a day of sadness, because historically she knew that was always a day I was kind of sad. And so that's my story. I'm
curious about something. I'm curious.
Yeah, ask all the questions you want, man. Ask all the questions you want, because it's not been a linear journey even until today.
Before sitting at 31 in the pew for the first time voluntarily, did you believe in God? Did you have any relationship to God? Was there anything spiritual in your life before that?
Not really. I mean, I never really thought about God. I never really had the friend or the peer group to challenge me and ask me those types of questions, right? So it's kind of like this. I don't know. What's a sport you never play? Cricket? Do you ever play cricket? Do you like cricket? Is cricket part of your life? Exactly. You never have, right? And you're not around people who play cricket. And so therefore cricket isn't even part of your world. It's not on your radar. It's not something you think about. That was my journey. Minus when I went and got sober and, AA, they started talking about this higher power thing. But if you remember back then, even then, I'm like, what higher power? What are we talking about?
What age did you go into AA?
Dude, I wish I would have written all these dates down, because I didn't. So it would have been when I was 30. Call it 30.
Okay, so near a year before you sat in the pew voluntarily for the first time.
Call it 3 years. I think I'm blending things together. There's a period. There's a lost couple of years in there that, just kind of blend together. Transitionary period, we'll call it. So
you went into AA, let's say 3 years before you sat in that pew voluntarily, and you heard about the higher power, but you didn't really know what they were like. There was no connection to that, that concept for 3 years until you sat at the pew with your current wife.
And then there wasn't a concept. There wasn't even a connection then. Just because I sat in the pew didn't mean anything, Like, remember why I was there? I was there because I wanted to spend time with a girl. I wasn't there because I wanted to get my cup filled with the word, right?
You weren't there to fill the hole in your soul.
No, it wasn't. I started getting curious about it. It started opening up my mind to the possibility that maybe I could benefit from being in those pews more often and hearing those messages and reading the books in front of me. But it was not some people find God, quote unquote, and then they just balls to the wall. They just kind of like infatuation when you fall in love with a girl or something, right? My journey was not that. It was this slow, steady, day by day, trusty more, that type of thing.
Wow.
A little bit unconventional, I believe, but yeah, which is I think completely 180 from you. We were joking beforehand, but I'm like, in Latin America, I think you come out of the womb a Catholic, because culturally, and all over the world too. I mean, a lot of places are like that. Catholicism.
Well, my story with God, it's an interesting one. It goes back and forth. So I was born Catholic. I went to a Catholic school in St. Louis and St. Charles, Missouri. I went to St. Cletus, and I did, I got baptized when I was a baby with the godfather and the godmother. I did my confirmation. I did my first communion in St. Charles, Missouri at St. Cletus Church, but it never really meant much to me. When I was in my teenage years, I was pretty philosophical. I was reading philosophy and had a sense of God, but I still hadn't really understood for myself this relationship and who God was. And my first real significant experience, spiritual and religious, it's actually pretty crazy. It was a retreat we did in high school as a class. We did a spiritual retreat, Catholic, to a retreat center. It was, you would spend the night there the whole weekend from Friday to Sunday to me, it was just another experience to go have fun and get out of the house and hang out with friends. And we even took drugs. We even took drugs, smoked some weed. I did not go there at the retreat. I didn't go there thinking about spirituality. I went there thinking it's going to be a blast. Going away for the weekend with my friends. It's just completely blasphemous and disrespectful to the whole focus of the trip. I didn't care at all about the spiritual aspect of what we were going there to do. But after the first day, and then the second day, things started happening where before the second day ended, we were throwing everything in the toilet, flushing down the substances that we took, and we got into it. Like we got captivated by the whole spiritual thing, Listen to this, Kevin. This is a very interesting thing that happened. It's at the end of the retreat, there's this thing called the baptism of the Holy Spirit. And there are these 7 gifts that you get from the Holy Spirit. These 7 gifts. And
7 gifts. Okay.
One of these gifts is tongues, speaking in tongues.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever seen, this is crazy. Have you ever seen, the pastors praying on people and they fall? And
yeah. I've seen it. Called? I don't know what to think of it, but I've seen it. It's a lot in Pentecostal churches, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm 17 years old, 16 or 17. I start speaking in tongues by the end of this retreat. Yeah.
Not on purpose. Not on purpose. Like you weren't like, hey, I'm going to speak in tongues. It was like, yeah, I got that.
No. This is a curveball. This is
no way.
I don't even know what's going on here. Like I'm just, for some reason, started speaking in tongues, and I started putting my hands on my high school friends and they would fall. True story.
Whoa. What?
True story.
See, here I am sitting here with all the faith in the world, and I have a hard time still believing this. I know that it's true because you're telling me it's true, but man.
You know what? I don't even blame you, because even for me, so just let me tell you about this experience, because it's really key to everything that happened afterwards.
Right.
I go there with a bunch of drugs just to have fun and party. I repent, throw it all down the toilet, start playing along. I end up in the end speaking in tongues and putting my hands on people, and my classmates are freaking falling in front of me. And when I leave that experience, when it's all said and done, I actually have doubt, just like you. I'm like, I just lived
even
that.
After all that, and you got to see it with your own eyes and feel it, you still had doubts.
Live it. I was like, what? I was in a third space. I was like, what? I was outside of myself. I was what do you call it when you disassociate? I was kind of in shock.
Yeah, you're disassociated. Yeah.
What was that like? And so we go back to school, and the people that went to the retreat started fighting with the people that didn't go, because now we're better than you because we went to this retreat and you didn't go.
Right.
We know God, you know. And I didn't relate to anybody because of the experience that I went through. I was more still in shock for the next 3, 4, 5 days. I was in this place of what just happened.
Right.
Bear with me, because the next week after the retreat, the next Wednesday, we were all going to become part of the community. And we were going to go to the community every week, and our lives has changed. We were changed people now. But I still wasn't, I was still disassociated. I was still not connecting with myself or anybody else. I'm sitting there at church, I'm listening to the guy talking, and in that moment, I have this feeling of, I don't believe in this. And I went to the guy that was leading the event, the whole thing, and I went to him like, I'm not coming back. I don't believe in this. And he said something to me. I swear, this is what he said. It's like, I understand, but you got to understand one thing. Just as God is going to work on you, so is the devil. That's what the guy told me at that moment. This is a true story, Kevin. You know what I said to him in that moment?
I don't even want to know. I'm afraid. What did you say to him? So be it?
I said, exactly. I said, so be it.
I knew it. Yeah. I'm like, you know what? What would I have said back then? I'd been like, yeah, all right, whatever, dude. I'm going to go surf or skate.
So, not even surf. I went down that. I mean, like that. Those were the darkest moments of my consumption. And remember, I sobered up. I'm talking to you. I was like 16, 17 here. I sobered up. I mean,
you're in your peak usage. Yeah.
I sobered up 4 years later. So you can imagine those 4 years after that moment, because in that moment, I had no guilt, no standard. I was fully like, I don't care.
You didn't have a code. Yeah. You didn't have a code to live by. Like neither one of us did back then. It was a very selfish period, you know, in terms of being all about hedonism and fun and self-fulfillment and all those things.
Yeah, hedonism. That's what it was. Pure hedonism.
Yeah.
But what brought me back was that book that my friend gave me called The Valkyries by Paulo Coelho.
Oh, you've mentioned that before.
It was a book about angels. And when I read that book, 4 years later, 5 years later, what hit me was, man, you've been looking for God, like really looking for God in these past 4 or 5 years, in all this hedonism and all this consumption and all this doing drugs. You are looking for God, my friend. That's what I came to terms. Like,
how did you figure that out? By reading that book, and you got done with it, and then that's where you came to the realization? Is that why it was such an important text for you?
When I was reading the book, it was a book about angels, and Paulo Coelho is explaining angels. And I don't know at what point in the book, I was like, oh my God, I'm looking for God. I'm searching for God. Like, I'm really looking for God. That's what's missing in my life. And that led me down the path that brought me to AA. And when I sat in AA, there was the whole higher power. And that, to me, I immediately connected, like, this is what I've been looking for. This is what I've been looking for.
What, like, walk me through the period from, because you're born into Catholicism. That's very much part of Latin American culture, Filipino culture, like a lot. I mean, all over the world. So you're born into it. Then you have this experience when you're teen years. What was happening in that other period of time? You're going to a Catholic school when you're in St. Louis, like when you were in Libya and Nicaragua. Were you also going to church every Sunday? Your family, like, what did that look like? Or
my mom would drag me to church every Sunday.
Okay.
Every Sunday she would.
And dragging you tells me exactly how you felt about it. You didn't want to go.
Yeah.
What kid wants to?
No, it was
usually,
hot.
Right.
Hot. It was boring. I was hungover. It was Sunday. I didn't want to go at all.
Right.
I had to stay home.
But you still went. Did that give you any animosity for church? Like any, like, when you were older, it was like, oh man, I remember getting drugged to church and being boring and hot and not something you wanted to do. Was that a prohibiting factor for you later on in life, where you had those memories of church as a child?
Well, if I'm honest, I still don't go to church up to this day. I'm not a church goer. I'm a God believer.
We don't have a real good track record in our family either. I mean, we're not a big percentage of Sundays in the pews.
In AA, I came to understand God for myself again. Like, I started understanding what this higher power was and learning how to relate to this higher power as a sane way of relating. Remember, he helps us come back to sanity. Not but the higher power brings us back to sanity. So I started really understanding what this higher power was. When I met my wife, we would go to church, and I went to Catholic church. I did Catholic experiences. Then I went to Baptist, evangelical. I had a pastor who was a friend, and I would go do Bible studies. And then I met a friend that was a missionary. It was called Surfers on a Mission. So what these guys do is they have Bibles. Let me see if I have one close to me. No, it's not here. But they have Bibles and videos of surfers who are Christians. And they hand them out to surfers. Like, they'll meet you in the parking lot after surfing. Yeah. And they're like, hey, I got a gift for you. And they give you a DVD. And you go watch it. And it's like, like Christian surfers. Or they'll give you a Bible, a surfer's Bible. And it's the New Testament. But it's riddled with stories of surfers who have changed their lives.
That's cool.
Like professional surfers. So then I started doing the whole Bible study with them, going back and forth. And while reading the Bible, I read the story of, I think it was Saul, that changed, that he was a persecutor of the Christians, and then he changed his ways and then became a Christian himself. Like, he was literally a persecutor. He would assassinate Christians and persecute them, and then he came to church. And I think he's going on a road with somebody talking, and he tells them, there's a river right there. What keeps you from baptizing me right now? And he's like, nothing. And they got down and he got baptized. So when I read that, I came and I asked my friend, like, there's the ocean. What keeps you from baptizing me? And he's like, nothing. And I'm like, so you're credentialed? I remember that was like a stupid question. Oh, so you got like a credential for this? He's like, well,
you're an official baptizer?
I do have a card that says that I'm part of a church, and that I'm like, okay, so you're certified. All right, let's go. And I got
certified by God.
Certified by God, and he baptized me in the ocean, my surfer friend. So we got baptized on a surfing trip. Just because I had read that and I was coming back to God, and that's my story. And my whole sobriety and everything I do is based on God and my relationship with my higher power. If I am not connected to my higher power, I'm on the wrong path. I feel the hole in my soul.
Dude, me too. I mean,
that's my story, bro.
So I love it, dude. I've got a leg cramp right now too. So if anybody's watching on video and wondering why I'm fidgeting, well, we ran out of bananas this morning and I'm low on potassium. So we, I want to share something with the listeners that I think can be pretty transformative. I've given this book to one of my best friends. I've given it to Chris Calico. He's a friend of mine who's a rapper here in KC. It was weird. It was on my birthday. So on my birthday, I went in, and I think I've talked about this on this podcast, but I'm gonna give it a shout out again, because the guys I've given this book to, this Bible, they're like, wow, this is easier to read. So if you're somebody like me who's read the Bible and you're like, man, it reminds me of Shakespeare. It's like the way it's written is very authentic. And there's a King James version that's like that. Then my church uses the New International Version, which was, a little bit easier to comprehend. But this New Living Translation, NLT version, I am so digging right now. And so I got this book. It's called like Every Man's Bible. It's got all these cross references on like, hey, I'm feeling anxiety. Where would I go find counsel in the Bible about that? Short little sound bites for guys, right? Like pictures for guys like me. But the way it's written has been so awesome for me that it's caused me to actually want and seek out time in the Bible, which for me historically was not anything before, because I think the way my brain works, I'm like, man, if this is confusing, and then I start to like psychoanalyze the footnotes and then I get lost and I haven't learned anything. So that's just a little tip. If you're not, people say to spend time in the Word. And by the way, the Bible's not the only word. I will say this out loud. So Jose and I are both Christians. Dude, there are tons of other religions in the world. It's like whatever your jam is, whatever it is, if you're Hindu, well, it doesn't matter, Muslim, whatever it is, you've got your text. Typically, you have something that's historical that helps you understand your philosophy on spirituality. If the translation you're using isn't working for you, find a different translation, because that's been a huge unlock for my connection to my God. So, what are you gonna say, man?
So on that note, one thing for me, I explored with not explored to become a Buddhist, but I learned a lot about Buddhism. I love Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
I love
me too. There's a lot of things you and I, philosophy.
Yeah, I love it. I love one thing that I learned in AA that really made it easier for me, that brought it all together. Before AA, when I was doing drugs, I thought myself spiritual, right? I'm spiritual. I don't need religion. I'm spiritual. I hate that. I don't want to say I hate it, but like, if you tell me you're spiritual, I want to know what your spiritual practices are. I don't want to just know that you just don't, like, tell me what you practice and I'll tell you if you're spiritual or not. But because there's people that just say they're spiritual, but they don't practice anything. They're just hedonists and just whatever. But so I came into AA under the belief that, and I can still believe this is how I made sense of it for myself, that God speaks 1,000 languages so that we can all understand them. So God speaks 1,000 languages so that we can all understand him. But he chose a language specifically for me that makes it easier for me to understand them because it's part of my culture. It's part of my upbringing. It's part of my language.
Yeah.
So to study Hinduism in Nicaragua is kind of not effective because I don't relate to people and be in communion with people and really learn how to go deep in community with God. If I'm trying to learn a religion that's not, part of who I am and what I was born into. So I said to myself, God made it simple. God made you Christian. This is the language he chose for you to speak. Learn about this language, and it'll be easier for you to learn about God and relationship with God. So I learned that in AA. I attribute AA to teaching me how to relate to my higher power in that way, instead of being lost in everything.
Yeah. And I think people could get lost. It's like, if you don't believe, or if you, it's not even that you don't believe. If you're like me and it just wasn't part of your life. It wasn't that I didn't believe. It's just I wasn't like you. I wasn't philosophical at a young age. I'm very philosophical now. Like, I think that's part of what I'm enjoying about life right now. All the subjects that I looked at and I passed over in college, like philosophy, psychology, world religion, those are all history. Those are all things I'm super interested in now as an adult. I'm like, I'd love to be Rodney Dangerfield and back to school and literally go back to college and sit in school and learn about these things because I'm fascinated by them. Like, I'd love to do that. But if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't know where I land on this whole spirituality thing, dude, go buy a book about world religion or whatever and experience them all. Like, understand them all. I think that there's value in everybody's different point of view. The Quran was not a book that was made up. The whatever the Hindu book is not a book that's made up. These are all historical texts that are super, super important that I plan on reading in my life.
And the fascinating thing to me is that not everybody knows. Like, there might be some listeners here today that don't know that what do they call the Abraham? What's the word in Spanish? Is Abrahamicas, that Abraham,
What is it?
the religions of Abraham, that Jewish, Christian, and Muslim are all the same mind. They're all the same God. They're all the same. Just that the Jewish stopped where Jesus took over, and then the Muslim. I know it's a little more complex than that, but
they all have similar backgrounds, right?
Right, same origin. They have the same books. The Muslims, the Quran, the Bible, it's all the same religion. It's the same God. It's the same. It's the same thing, interpreted in a different way, and it's sad that these interpretations have caused so much divide and so much pain and so much destruction.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at what's happening, Israel, Gaza, Palestine, that whole area. And even if you look back at, our disagreements, United States disagreements with Middle East, right? A lot of the majority of conflict that's taking place on the planet right now has to do with going way back in spirituality and God and disagreements on this stuff. I mean, this is a huge. It's a majority of what humans fight about. And I'm like, dude, could we maybe understand? Could we all maybe agree that maybe we're all right? I don't know. Maybe we're all right. Because here's one thing that's true. There's a living human being right now that can actually testify as what's happening after we die, lights out. There's not somebody here. None of us actually know, which is where this whole concept of faith comes in. None of us can definitively sit here. I can sit here with my pastor. He can say, I believe this to be true, and this is my beliefs, but can you show me ironclad proof that I can see with my hands? No. Or my own two eyes? No. Okay.
You know how I challenge my friends? Because I have friends that are evangelical. I mean, my missionary friend, my pastor friend, and you, and I have friends that are Catholics.
Like your buddy who's the pastor up in New York, right? Your friend who's,
he's a priest.
Yeah, he's a priest.
He's not a pastor.
He's not a priest. at a significant church too, right?
Part of the hierarchy of the Roman Catholic Church. He's
right.
He's
in it. He's in the thick of it.
He's the dean of the St. Patrick's Cathedral. It's a very high position. It's a very significant, notable position. My friend and client, I've been working with him. And it's beautiful seeing how human he is. Like he's just as human as any other human that I work with. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's revealing. It's an honor to be working with him. But what I would tell my Catholic friends is, just to challenge them, is like, so you're telling me you're 100% sure that God is Catholic?
What do they say to that, man?
They're just like, well, like, so you're telling me he's Catholic. God is Catholic. That's what you're telling. God is Jewish. Yeah, I mean, you can't, like you say, we don't know. We can only find our relation. But one last thing is this book right here, How God Changes the Brain.
What is that? Who wrote that? I haven't heard of that book.
A couple of doctors, Andrew Newberg, MD, and it's breakthrough findings from a leading neuroscientist on how God changes the brain. Exercising your brain.
Are we going to talk about neuroplasticity with faith?
Well, exercise, like chapter 8 is exercising your brain, 8 ways to enhance your physical, mental, and spiritual health. And it just talks about all this. Does God have a heart? It's very interesting. But one thing it does say is that people who are open-minded, in other words, you might have faith in a religion, but are open to relating to other people. And you can have conversations with other religions, and you're not going to impose yourself or judge them.
Yeah.
Their brain is healthier. The people who are, I don't know what the word would be, but are more dogmatic, they're more judgmental.
My way or the highway. It's my way or the highway. If you don't believe this, you're going to burn in hell. And I think that's like the biggest turnoff to me, man. It's like, dude, if you're not on my team, you're going to burn in hell. Hard no.
They discovered that causes damage in the brain. Your amygdala, the amygdala gets bigger. It's the amygdala is a threat. I think it's the amygdala. It's the threat, fear, anger, aggressive. Like it grows, and it's actually damaging to people to be that dogmatic and that me against you. It's actually not healthy for the brain. So it's pretty fascinating stuff about how God and faith. And faith is the number one. Like if you bring faith, like it's VUCA Fit method. You do that in the framework of faith, and it's what gives power to everything we do is faith. Faith is the most powerful tool. According to this book, scientifically, faith is the most powerful tool.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that because I take my ice bath every Sunday. I sure there's physical benefits. I do it for the mental benefits. For me, I do it for me as a practice. And for me, it is a spiritual practice. It is a time when, well, sometimes I'm listening to my gangster rap when I'm doing it, and I am in a different mindset. But most times, I have on a very specific song, "Oceans" by I can't even think of who it is, but it's a very spiritual song to me. Yeah. And it's a time for me to connect with God. Once you get past and nobody can see this but me, right? Which is what's, I think, super cool about it and God. I've got the cheap $50, blue Amazon bath. And by the time I'm able to release myself and relinquish my control and calm myself, in an ideal world, I'm face up, or I've got my palms up. Ideally, I'm sitting in the sun, and ideally the sun's shining on me because that feels a lot better than doing it in the shade. And I've got an open posture, and I'm basically surrendering, and saying, all right, this is uncomfortable, and it's just temporary. I'm surrendering to my God, and this is how I reconnect with my faith and give myself a start to the week. Because if you look at the calendar, when does the week start? It doesn't start on Monday. That's when the work week starts. The calendar's week starts on Sunday. I want to have a great week. It's not the weekend. It's the beginning of the week for me. It's how I set myself up for success. And so for me, things like an ice bath are very, very spiritual activities for me. I think that if somebody's listening and they're like, hey, maybe this God stuff is for me. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm a believer. Maybe I'm not. Or maybe I'm a Christian who was a kid. My parents made me go, but as an adult, I haven't reconnected, but I still believe. Don't think that going and checking the box and sitting in a pew is what it takes to be spiritual again. My wife shared with me last night or night before, I can't remember what it was, that her most connected time, her most time when she's not thinking about anything is when she's on the mat at her hot yoga church or her hot yoga class. Like that's like church for her. She's able to empty her mind. I'm like, man, that's really, really cool. Which reminds me of skateboarding for me, probably surfing for you. Spiritual activities. Yeah. They look like athletic pursuits to others, but I'll tell you, if I were doing my skateboarding for an athletic pursuit, I could be picking up 100 other activities that would probably help me more. Yeah. For me, it's spiritual. It's literally like, all right, I'm in flow. I'm connected. God's given me this set of skills that's mind-blowing to me. Wow. Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. Did I tell you I skated the other day? Hopefully my Dr. Doan, if you're listening to this, I did not skate. There's no way Doc's listening. So I was in the alley and Landon, my son, he landed his tail whip on his scooter the other day. You know what a tail whip is?
I can imagine what a tail whip on a scooter is.
So you're on a scooter, you basically flip the scooter around 360 while you're in there and land it. So he's got this badass ramp that I'm terrified of. It's pretty small, but it's got a lot of kick to it. And he was landing his tail whip at the skate park the other day. He landed his tail whip on his ramp, and he asked a question. He said, "Dad, like, do you feel like you could just, basically cruise on your board?" And I said, "Let's find out." I feel like I could. I got my Valelli skateboard, and I kicked off once, rode about 10 feet, turned around, came back, and then I got off because I could do that, but I'm more afraid of like hitting a rock and straining my knee or something, causing more damage. But it did feel good to be on a skateboard for the first time since, like, I don't know, August of last year or something. And I can't wait to get back on and go around the neighborhood, man.
Part of the recovery is going to be getting over the fear also.
Well, right now, I'm just not supposed to be on it. So I'm actually not afraid of that. I'm afraid, I'm waiting for an MRI to get ordered. Like, I may still have another surgery on the horizon. So,
We good?
What else, dude? I'm good, man. I'm good. I think I do want to leave people with one message because mine and yours are the same. So first of all, being spiritual doesn't mean you got to go sit at church every Sunday. Although since our church remodeled, I've been showing up there more, and I'm trying to lean more into it because I do feel more connected. But that's the churchianity thing, right? Like, don't let that be your check mark. You can download apps if you're curious. There's a Bible app. I'm sure there's an app for the Quran and every other faith. And you don't have to like it. It doesn't have to be this binary thing like black or white. Like, there's shades of gray. Yeah. Just like everything else, there's shades of gray. And so if you feel like you're lost in life, sometimes you can just find like a quote or something from one of these spiritual texts that might get you to lean into whatever works best for you. And if something doesn't work for you, try something else. I think that's the other thing. Because I think a lot of people grew up and they had bad experiences when they were maybe forced to go to church and they didn't want to. And then they think that, hey, God's not for me or whatever, right? And I can tell you that my God and my Savior's a dude named Jesus. He walked on earth about 2,000 years ago. He loves you, man, like he does. And I'm sure the other gods and the other points of view say the same thing. So don't give up. That's probably it. How about you, dude? You got
I'm going to finish. Just somebody in our group used to say, if you don't believe in God, just pray to mine. He'll listen.
Pray to mine. He'll listen. All right. There you go.
Well, pray to mine. Well, my God. If you don't believe in God, just pray to mine and he'll listen.
Mind? Is that what you're saying? M-I-N-D?
Mine. No, M-I-N-E. Mine. My God. Pray to my God. He'll listen to it. If you don't believe in God, just pray to mine. He'll listen.
All right. Anything else?
Nothing else.
Nothing else. Are you surfing this weekend? Are you climbing volcanoes? What are you doing?
Staying home.
None of it?
Miles.
I was gonna say none of it. You got to stack. You used all your wife miles. You got to restock.
Yeah, a deficit.
You're in a deficit.
I got to get.
I took my son to the skate park last weekend, and it was the first time I was one of the parents sitting watching. I did not like it. I did not like being a sideline parent. Just like martial arts, I don't like being like, I want to be on the mat and participating. I don't want to be watching. So that was really effing hard. I think it's the first time I've ever been to a skate park and just watched since I was 5.
It's because you're a big kid.
It's because I'm a huge kid, man. And because, I am a big kid. So maybe I'll go to the skate park again this weekend, and maybe I'll watch my son's scooter. Until next time, I'm Kevin. This is Jose. We got just a few asks. 1, like this episode. 2, subscribe. 3, if you like free stuff, go to VUCAFit.com. Until next time, we hope you have a phenomenal weekend. Be well.